Are you at your point where you think you've hit your bottom, or maybe that there's just no way you're ever going to feel like things can change? I was like that. I really was. And I want you to know, my name is Bromo, by the way. I want you to know that there is a way out. Please join us for my podcasts.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
All right, here I am. Hey, last day of April. How about it? I'm going to do a podcast because I feel inspired. Of course, I feel inspired almost every single day to do one, and I always love hearing from people. My name is Bromo. My sobriety date is 2/17/09. I am an alcoholic. I am not an expert. I don't have any kind of certification or any degree or anything like that. I just have life experience. My real strength, and I'm sure people who have heard my podcast before will tell you and tell me that my real strength is my guests, and this is what I fondly love to have. I am always grateful for anybody, by the way, who listens to these, but I'm more grateful for anybody who wants to come on and share. Now, a lot of people have shared their stories many times through meetings or whenever. Some are sharing it for the first time here in my podcast. When you share, of course, it's a hard thing sometimes. You can go an hour. They tell you to try to divvy it up in 3 sections, the beginning, and then how you were when you were full-on, blown-out alcoholic or on drugs, and then how you became to become sober and what you do now. So it's tough sometimes when you tell your story. It's easy to do it on a podcast like I've done before, where I have all my segments and all my stories leading up. It bores the hell out of some people, I'm sure, but it's very thorough, and so I'm very anxious to have a guest who I just met today. His name is Darris Grant. I said that right, Darris?
Yeah, you got that right.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. Darris Grant is a very large man, and we're going to talk about a large man in so many ways. We're going to talk about that in several minutes. But Darris Grant, your sobriety date is, if I get this right, 6/17/2022. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, you're from Fargo, but you moved out here. You've been in Bismarck 20 years.
Yep.
You are 33 years old, just a young man.
I feel pretty old, though, not going to
lie. And first of all, you have a better voice than me, which is about 99% of the people I have on here have a better voice than me, what always pisses me off, but that's okay. Let's continue. Do you have any kids, or have you ever been married, anything like that?
No, unfortunately, no one's tried to make an honest man out of me yet, but I have one son, so
awesome.
He's 5. He'll be 6 in December.
Well, I'm sure the married life will change one day when you become famous, and we'll talk about that a little later on as well. But what you do for people as well, that charm will carry over through a lot of people. But what kind of family did you grow up in? A lot of people, a lot of kids?
I grew up in foster care for the most part.
Oh, me and my big mouth. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're okay. I actually did end up being reunited with my biological parents when I was about 5-ish, and typical addict background. Both my parents were alcoholics. I grew up in an alcoholic home.
Yeah.
Very unstable. I was the middle child, and then when my brothers came to move in with us, I kind of got pushed to the background.
How many brothers did you... Oh, first of all, I have to lay out, not the ground rules. First of all,
okay.
I apologize a lot now, and I apologize
Oh, no, you're good, man.
I apologize when I interrupt. Now, I tell all my guests the reason why sometimes I interrupt so rudely is there's a point I might want to make, or a quick question, and I'll ask you right away so I don't forget it. But how many brothers did you have, or do you have?
I have two brothers.
Okay, buddy, continue.
Okay, so I have 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and so I grew up in Duluth, Minnesota. My mom was in recovery for the most part. My dad, he was up and down with his recovery at the time. I didn't know what recovery was at the time either. I just do remember seeing the sobriety chips in the house.
Sure.
The ones that I got now. So I do remember seeing those, but from my childhood, my home life wasn't the best. And granted, I was a very unruly child as well. But I found my bright spot was school, and that's really where I flourished, was in school, my academics. I was a very popular kid growing up. I did violin. I was kind of a nerd. I did violin, student council. I was a crossing guard, stuff like that. So the attention that I was seeking at home, I found it at school. So,
okay, let's stop there. You and I are completely different. When I was in high school, I was the kid that nobody knew. You would turn around you'd turn around at the end of the year and go, "Are you new here?" "Nope, I've been sitting behind you all year." "Oh, could you pass the yearbook to Betty Big Chest behind you?" "Yeah, sure, there you go."
you probably would have been my best friend, man. I kind of gravitated towards kids like that.
When I was in junior high, the only time I ever took a music class, so to speak, the teachers passed out instruments, and I was the last kid to be given an instrument, and I was given the flute, and I was beat up for 3 weeks in a row carrying that flute around the hallways. So I have no music ability at all. But anyway, you played the violin. Did you? Were you one of those protocol where you taught yourself or what?
No, I should actually rewind. I was learning to play the violin. If you ask my mom, honestly, she's like, it sounded like a cat was dying in the basement,
and that's okay.
And that's why they would get upset.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I did like the violin. That was my go-to instrument at the time.
That's neat though. That's pretty. You ever try to do that again?
I haven't. I've thought about it.
Yeah.
But like, if I was going to play an instrument, though, like in all honesty, I would kind of want to do the harmonica.
Yeah.
I don't know why. The harmonica always sounded really cool to me.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so you did well in school, though. You liked school. How come? Do you think? You said you were a nerd, kind of, but you liked school?
Probably because of the attention. Because like I said, I was the middle child.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, what was my intelligence. So from a young age, I was always told how smart I was, and I was kind of the class clown at the same time.
Yeah.
But growing up, I always wanted attention, so I found it in school because I was able to excel at tests and assignments and projects, while also like being able to like be funny. So that was kind of my thing. But it also, my intellect also helped me detach from many things because growing up, we weren't like really rich.
Right.
So I would have to show up to school in hand-me-downs, which is kind of a traumatizing thing for a kid.
Yeah.
So my humor made up for that. So that's why the two went hand in hand, because I do remember going to school in like secondhand clothes or my brother's clothes, or not being able to afford a haircut or having like stuff like that. So my humor was what kind of like drew the focus away from what I was wearing as a kid.
Got it. So that was high school. So when did you discover the miracles of drinking or drugs? Did you ever do drugs when you were young?
No, not really. I smoked weed once, but it was just like a hit that really didn't do anything. I discovered drinking at the right age of 18.
Okay.
Like legit drinking. Granted, I did have like a beer when I was like 10, but I threw up. So
yeah.
Definitely wasn't my thing.
Were you ever like taught the evilness of drinking when you were young? Because you said your mom was in recovery, right?
Yep.
So were you taught that's not a good thing to do? Don't go down there. Did you get into drinking on your own, or did people influence you, or what?
No, I was part of the DARE program growing up.
Right.
I actually graduated, so I was thoroughly against drugs. Plus, seeing my dad in the home and stuff, it wasn't a thing that I found attractive. So I was kind of against it. Yeah. But growing up, I grew up in like group homes and placement, like YCC and PLC. That's where I grew up for the majority of my teen years. Okay. So when I got out and I kind of had that freedom, I had that I'm missing out on this. Like I have years to catch up and like hang out with my friends and do all the wild stuff. Sure. That's where my behavior took me, because I'm like, well, I missed out on all this during the times I was locked up. I'm going to make up for that lost time. Well, that lost time ended up turning into 13 years of drug abuse, and alcohol abuse. So,
what kind of drug abuse?
It was, well, I shouldn't say 13 years of drug abuse. It's 13 years of alcoholism and maybe like 5 years of drug abuse. Okay. That was when I started doing meth.
Oh, yeah, I've never done that. So
yeah, don't ever do it. Like I was a weird meth addict. I wasn't like one of the cool ones that take stuff apart. I was one of those weirder ones that no one wanted around. So
Yeah, I could just see, who's that genius over there trying to play the violin? Oh, that's Darris.
No, I like hallucinated and set off the wall stuff, and
Yeah.
just weird. Trap houses were like, no, you're not allowed to come here. So that kind of tells you how bad of a meth addict I was.
Was drinking fun for you back then?
Back then it was, because like I said, I like being the center of attention, and I found my niche, I guess, because I was able to get people together and come up with money. I knew people that were over the age of 21 to buy for us.
Yeah.
I knew people that had cars. Like, I was the party starter.
Yeah.
And I was always the center of the party, and that's where I found that attention that I was seeking.
So you were pretty popular before you were kind of into the drinking mode, and then now even more so when you're drinking, you felt even more powerful and popular, right? You liked it.
Yeah. Like, that was my go-to for the attention and the purpose, I guess, in my life at the time was that, hey, I can get a party going and I can keep the party going. That was my main focus. That's how I found my purpose in life as a teenager.
You like drinking? Did it ever get you in trouble when you were young?
Oh, yeah.
How so?
First time I went to prison, I broke into a liquor store.
Let's talk about that. How old were you?
I was 19.
And was this an idea of yours pre-drinking, or did you drink and all of a sudden you say, hey, you know what, I probably could use some more money and some more booze. Let's break into
We were drinking. Yeah, we were drinking already, and we were running out of booze. And I made the offhand remark of, hey, like, we can go break into a liquor store. And my friends were all like, really? You would do that? And then I kind of seen it as a challenge, and I'm like, yeah, let's go do it. And I remember unhooking a propane tank from the house we were at, and we drove to Captain Jack's, or Cashwise first. And I remember I was like, well, they have the steel gutter things up. Like, I can't get in there. And then they were like, oh, you're not going to do it. I'm like, yeah, watch me. Went to South Captain Jack's, and I threw that propane tank through the window. And granted, it's not funny, but like, looking back now, because like I did make my amends to them, like financial. I had to pay back the window. But now, though, like, something that's really kind of embarrassing was the fact that I did break into a liquor store, and this was my first time in a liquor store.
Sure.
And
is that right?
I did not know where anything was at.
Yeah.
So I remember when the police confiscated the stuff that I took out, like, it was just the cheap stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember being in jail and people teasing me like, well, you broke into a liquor store and you just got nothing but cheap stuff. And I just felt dumb because I was like, this is my first time, like, I didn't know where anything was at.
So this is your first offense, basically, your first hardcore criminal job by breaking into Captain Jack's. To all those people in, I don't think Captain Jack's are out in the West Coast. I'm from California, by the way, Darris, so I'm not sure people know. But Captain Jack's is a liquor store / I go in there all the time to buy my cigars, just to let you know that, Darris. That's my one and only vice. And they have a cigar area in there. But so when you did your first offense, you got arrested, you got put into jail. Were you scared?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would think.
I did. Yeah, granted, like I said, I hid it under my false bravado, but I was scared. I didn't know what was going to happen to me, and I did have an opportunity to get out. Actually, I'm very adaptable.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of my I guess, trauma responses, that I can adapt to stressful situations.
Right.
But the hardest part was when it came time for me to get a bond, that my bond was kind of low and I had no one to call. That was probably like my hardest pill I had to swallow, was that the people I was calling were like, no, we're not going to help you out.
So when you don't have a bond and you can't pay it, you have to stay a certain amount of days? I've never been to jail, knock on wood.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got to stay in jail. Like, they're not going to let you out.
But for how long? Until you pay the penalty or what? Or I don't know.
Until you get sentenced.
Okay.
So I sat for 73 days before I was sentenced.
Good Lord. Really? You could have got out. Like, when you say bond, how cheap are you talking about?
It was $1,000.
Oh, that's a little bit of a jolt.
Well, I mean, I guess that's not that time. It seemed kind of high, but like I guess we'll get into this. But like my other bonds have been like pretty high.
Yeah. Okay.
But that bond was like, and I couldn't find anyone, and so I just got used to being in jail, which wasn't too much different from me being in like YCC or PLC. Same sort of hierarchy. You kind of got to be like the tough guy. Granted, I wasn't a tough guy. I was just good at cards and made people laugh. So
yeah. I can imagine. Hey, listen, you better stay right over there or I'll beat you up with a violin when I get out of here. When you're in jail...
Or talk you to death.
Yeah, when you're in... Well, that's my job. When you're in jail, do people actually say, hey, so what are you in here for? Do they actually do that?
Yeah, they do. They're like, hey, like, why are you in here? Like, and then when they asked me that, like, why I was in here, and I showed them, like, my paperwork and stuff, that was when they started laughing and stuff. Like, the older guys are like,
right.
Like, you break into a liquor store, they're like, and you can't, you couldn't get, like, the good stuff. They're like, there's a case, like, right there that you could have got, like, expensive bottles. And I was like, dude, I don't know.
Yeah, you could have got a case of Dom Perignon champagne. Instead, you get clear water, gutter water from the sewers. Which
UV cherry.
Which is, by the way, those gutter water from the sewers, vodka is very good when you crave vodka, by the way. Just didn't know if you know that. I was a vodka drinker, by the way.
Oh, no, I entirely know that. When I was homeless, that was our go-to, Kharkov.
Okay, so you get out of jail. So tell me the mid-ages of when you're in your 20s. Were you drinking more? Were you just starting to take meth?
So I didn't get out of jail. I ended up going to prison, and it was just because I ended up cocking off to the judge. I ended up laughing at my sentencing because what they were talking about, I found it funny, and the judge said that I was unremorseful.
Okay, wait a minute. This is when you couldn't afford the bail. You couldn't find anybody, so you go in front of a judge. You're stuck in jail, and so you were laughing at the judge? You made a wisecrack?
Yeah, it was when they were sentencing me, and I was going to get out that day on probation.
Right.
I was going to have 3 years of probation. I was going to get out and just have to pay the restitution. Well,
yeah.
When I was in court, they were saying that I had a gun on me, which wasn't true.
Oh, boy.
But I started laughing, and I was like, wow, you guys are really making me sound like a gangster.
Yeah.
And, then the judge sentenced me to 3 years.
Holy, right there on the spot.
Yeah, 3 years with 18 months suspended, so I did about a year and a half.
Should have made fun of his hairpiece while they were taking you away. So you go to jail. You're in there for what you said when you had to face the judge after 70-something days, correct? And then they're accusing you of this. You're Mr. Johnny, more criminal than you are, and then you made a wisecrack, and boom, you're off to prison now, right?
Yep.
What is that like? Tell me the difference between prison and jail.
Prison, you get more freedom, but at the time I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I was scared because I was a skinny kid.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be just like the movies.
Right.
So I remember getting in there, and like I said, my humor again is what saved me. Like, people found me funny.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
And then but the other part was, can I swear?
Just don't swear.
I'll try to keep it clean then. Okay, so someone in there called me the B word.
Okay.
And when you're in prison, getting called the B word is that's taboo, like really bad. Like, you're not supposed to call it. Well, anyways, I was in orientation. Someone called me that, some dude that was bigger than me, and I remember I picked up my eggs that we had for breakfast and I whipped them into his face. Because he was like, take my tray up from me, you B. And I'm like,
you can't say the female dog word, correct?
No, cannot say the female dog word.
That's what I thought I've heard, and that's true, right? That's true?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay.
So because of that, instead of going to minimum security, since it was my first time offense, I got upgraded to maximum. I had a medium override, so they put me in max. And this was in the old West unit, or old East unit at NDSP, where they had the murderers and the big-time people in there. And I remember getting... And it looked like how the prison does in the movies. There's tiers and everything, bars. Yeah. And I remember I got my first lesson, and there was when what they told me, I thought I earned like some respect, like some cool points. And I'm like, I was like, he called me this, and I was going to. And the older guys that were in there were like, no, they're like, you got us locked down.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, really?
They're like, they're like, you're immature. They're like, that's immaturity. Like, we don't do that here.
Oh, boy.
They're like, you don't even have that much time. They're like, you just do your time.
Yeah. Don't
cause any problems. Because they're like, we all get. It was a guy that was in there for murder, I think. It was tier I was on, and that's what he said to me.
So you're getting schooled now, aren't you?
Yeah, and that's where I started learning about respect, where I'm like, okay, well, same thing with teasing. You don't, like, I learned it back then where it's like, okay, you don't joke with someone unless you're, like, cool with them.
Yeah.
Like, because, like, I would joke around, like, a lot, like, oh, yeah, and they're like, no, like, you don't do that because you're coming off disrespectful.
Yeah. Okay,
So, like, yeah.
A quick question. Did you see any booze or drugs in prison?
No. I've heard about it, but never seen it.
That's funny because I had another gentleman that was on with me and said that he would see that all the time. So it's probably amazing, where you're at and who you're hanging with. But, yeah. So how long were you in prison for then?
I did the full year and a half. I think I got out a month shy, and that was just due to my immaturity. I got sent to treatment. I was smuggling cigarettes in there. Again, I thought it was a joke. I thought a lot of stuff was a joke during this time period. So, like, they sent me back to prison. I flat-timed my time, and I was only out for maybe a month and a half before I stole a vehicle.
You stole a vehicle because why? Why did you do that?
I was in South Dakota. I was drinking. I stole a vehicle to come back to Bismarck. So I have a theft of a motor vehicle charge in South Dakota.
Okay.
And I was also on the run for my probation because I had another year and a half on my sentence. Yeah. So I got revocated and sent back to do my other year and a half.
Let me ask you this, since you've done some, if you don't mind me asking, since you've done some prison time and jail time, do you think, and I've watched Cops and all that crap on TV, do you think that the odds that I hear of people going back to prison, returning back to prison are semi-high? Do you see the same people make mistakes and they go back, or you've heard about it?
Yeah, it's called recidivism, and it is very high.
Okay.
One, it's because I just attributed. Well, I'm just going to speak from my experience here with this.
Yep.
I attributed it to the reason why I was so comfortable going back was one, because I knew everyone there, and two, I knew it wasn't really a deterrent for me.
Yeah.
Because I knew it. Like, I'm like, I could go play basketball, hang out with my bros, play cards. I mean,
yeah.
I don't have. It's not like I got a girlfriend or someone to write home to. Granted, the times I did have a girlfriend, and she would send me money. So, like, if you get money in there, you're pretty like set for life.
Yeah,
like,
that's what I've heard.
That's a bad way to put it. No pun intended, I guess, but that really is it. It's very chill and laid back. Like, if you respect people, people will respect you.
So you got used to being under the watch. You got used to the hours. You got used to being in a cell. You got used to it, right? It was a comfortable environment, ironically, correct?
I used to call it vacation time.
Yeah, I've heard that from several people. I've heard that. And the only time that I thought, and I'll tell this again, Darris, the only time that I actually nodded and said to somebody, man, that doesn't sound that bad, is when a guy told me when I was at my first recovery home, he had come from prison. They released a bunch of people out of a van because they got a deal to go to either recovery or more time in jail. And so they said recovery. They went out to this place where I went, out in the desert. And the guy was telling me one day that they used to get drunk as hell in prison with making booze. And I said to him, quote, that doesn't sound that bad. And he looked at me like, are you crazy? No, really, seriously. But, just being somewhere safe, being in jail, being high. Stupid. That's how much of an alcoholic I am. When you got out of prison, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, quick. I've tried making hooch in jail, and it just didn't work. I also tried eating orange peels with toothpaste because it was supposed to trip you out like acid. But none of those things ever panned out.
Yeah, first of all, I wouldn't know. And I've heard you take fruit peels and sugar and whatever and put it in the toilet and put it on a string, and the string goes down. I've also heard of people sending messages through the toilet with a string attached. Is that true? Or whatever. I don't know.
You talk through the toilet. So I did that when I was in jail in Devil's Lake because the girls were on the other side of the wall. Well, you plunge your toilet, suck all the water out, and you can sit there and talk to the person on the other side because your toilets are connected.
Hey, what do you think when we get out of here? Out of here, out of here, out of here. You and I go grab a... Yeah, I'm making stupid jokes.
You're bringing me back, man. Like...
I want to talk about when you got out of prison. Now, when you were in prison, did you have anybody come by you and say, "Hey, listen, we've got some programs that I want you to check out"? Did they know when you were in prison that you drank a lot, that you were maybe an alcoholic at that point? Did you consider yourself an alcoholic at that point?
The first time, no. So the North Dakota prison system, they do a very good job of giving you rehabilitation services. So basically anyone that goes in there, they get signed up for treatment, stuff like that, medication if you need medication.
Right.
They do a really, really good job of providing those services for you. And granted, again, because I never took anything serious at the beginning, I was thoroughly against treatment. My first treatment was actually 12-step based, and I was very anti-God at the time, and I would argue up and down in group why there was no God, why I was the master of my own universe, why these guys were all weak-minded and they couldn't do it on their own. Like, I had every excuse not to do the 12 steps.
Yeah.
So, but again, I'm smart though. So like I would throw like theology. I remember reading like Nietzsche, stuff like that. I read something by Niccolo Machiavelli and like talked about like how like narcissism and stuff like that. And like I was very arrogant with it.
Yeah.
So I had every answer and reason not to do it. So goes to show you how I am.
No, that's fine. That's fine. But I want to know. I want to know when you actually thought to yourself, maybe I got a problem with drinking, or had you already started meth at this point, or were you strictly drinking?
Strictly drinking. My meth usage didn't start until about 2013.
Okay. I want to know when you started thinking to yourself, maybe I drink too much. Maybe I'm having a problem because, I want to know if that happened to you.
It was always a background thought.
Yeah.
I would, granted, towards like the middle of my drinking stuff, it started getting to the point where I was just drinking just to drink, and I was becoming a depressed drinker. Like I wasn't the life of the party anymore. Yeah, I wasn't the life of the party. No one wanted to drink with me because all that stuff, all that sadness and stuff that I was avoiding, it started coming out when I would drink.
Yeah.
So like, or I would throw temper tantrums, stuff like that. All my negative stuff started coming out. And that's where, at the time, I kept saying, oh, no, I'm going to hang on to, like, the good times and ignore the bad times. So, like, I would have, like, one good time and, like, 3 bad times to where I would just sit there and drink by myself. And that was it. I was just drinking to drink at that point.
Wasn't fun anymore, was it?
No, it really wasn't. It was, like, I was just existing. And there were times where I would be really drunk.
Yeah.
And I would say that. I'm like, hey, listen, like, I'm not having fun with this anymore. I was like, I'm sad. I was like, I don't got a girlfriend. I was like, I'm not working. I'm just been out of prison.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. It was like poor Darris.
So where were you living at this point?
I lived in Minnesota for a little bit when I got out the second time because I thought a change of environment would help. So I stayed and lived with one of my cousins over there.
Yeah.
And his wife, and granted, he didn't drink at the time, so that's why everyone thought it was like a good idea for me to go out there because they're like, okay, well, you can get out of North Dakota, you can go over there, you can get your job at the casino, stuff like that. Well, I ended up drinking, and he was against it at the beginning, but then he's like, oh, no, it's all right, and he allowed me to drink. And in turn, he ended up drinking with me and starting in, and then that's where the spiral just started. And granted, I was coming back from Bismarck and going out there, and then like flip-flopping back and forth.
You remember your spiral?
Yeah, I remember it.
Let's talk about that real quick. So I remember my spiral, and it's pretty vivid. I still have dreams about it. You ever have dreams about your spiral? Spirals, do you?
Yeah, spirals.
Have you ever had anybody say to you, have you ever told somebody, Darris, that you had a dream about drinking? Hey, man, I woke up thinking that I had relapsed. Do you ever tell anybody that? And has anyone ever said to you, that's a bad sign there, Darris?
Oh, yeah, they say that. I'm like, well, shit, I'm an alcoholic still, You know
why I disagree with that?
Why?
I disagree that it's a bad sign because I've always told everybody this, and I could be full of a bunch of crap, but I think it's your mind keeping you battle ready, man. I think when your mind has a dream of you contemplating or relapsing, it's your mind that says when you wake up, first of all, thank God that was a dream, and I am still sober. Second of all, I'm that close to relapsing and to drinking. I could, just like anybody else. Do you ever think about that it's your mind keeping you battle ready, or is it just me being an idiot?
No, dude, I was going to say like the exact same thing because the ones that I've had where I've used in my dreams. Like I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, it was just a dream.
Yeah.
Or like I wake up.
Yeah.
Like I wake up fully prepared to like call my sponsor and be like, hey, listen, like guess this happened. I'm like, oh wait, that was just a dream. And I'm just like, and it like you said, it helps me realize like how important my recovery is to me. That
Absolutely.
I would wake up in a panic, thinking that the world ended, because in my using dreams, it's not me going full bore. It's me like rationalizing like one drink to myself, or like a can of beer, or a cup of whiskey. It's just something tiny like that. Where
that's right. That's all it is. Hey, Darris, how long has it been? You say how long? Well, look, it won't hurt you to have one beer, man. Come on, dude.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. Or when I have meth dreams where it's like, oh, like I can see my mind rationalize it, where it's like, oh, well, technically, you could do meth. You're only doing a 12-step program for alcohol.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, the drugs don't count. And like that's how my dream would go. And I would dream about it, and then I would wake up and I'm like, oh my God, like I messed up.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh wait, that was just a dream. I've had numerous times where I've woken up and just been really, really grateful that it was all a dream. And it just solidifies the fact that like me being sober, me being in recovery that's how important it is to me.
I apologize if I took you off that direction, but I want to bring you back. Let's talk about a spiral you had that made you think maybe it's time that I surrender.
We'll just do the last spiral, because that's the worst one.
Sure.
So the last spiral that I had, it followed the same pattern. I was going through like another court case. I had an ankle bracelet on for alcohol. I had a serving job, and granted, I got my ankle monitor off.
Yeah.
And when I got that ankle monitor off, I started drinking, and it just all came flying back. I couldn't control it. I knew I couldn't control it, but I kept going because I was like, okay, well, you might go back to prison for 5 years. Have fun while you last. You can drink and do your job at the same time. Like, no one's going to care. Stuff like it's not like you're with your son's mom anyway. Stuff like that. Like, and it would feed it.
It's that little voice. It's that voice in your head that wants you to lose, man.
Yeah, and it followed the same routine to where I would get kicked out, and then I would go hang out with a buddy. We would drink.
Yeah.
I'd like basically couch surf, and I would be drunk the whole time. I got like my last paycheck, stuff like that, but this time it was different because my friends started telling me that, hey, Darris, like you need to sober up. Or I started wearing out my welcome a lot quicker at these places.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't the life of the party anymore. I was sad. I was depressed. I would get drunk to that point where I'm just like, I just want to listen to sad music, and people would be like, hey, Darris, it's Tuesday morning. Like, we have work, and you're sitting here jamming sad country music at 6 a.m. with all the lights off.
Yeah.
I was like, it's just me. I'm going to prison. I was like, I don't have a reason to live right now. Yeah. And it was just me feeling sorry for myself, and they didn't want me around.
Yeah.
So this time, though, I would go walk over to Cashwise, and I would stand outside the front, wait for it to open with like a little few quarters in my pocket, hoping to get like a shooter or something for the day. And I happened to meet someone who was part of the homeless community, and he invited me to go drink with him. And this is my first time like being introduced to the homeless part, because I've been homeless in the sense of like couch serving, but I was never homeless before.
Right.
And this was my first time, and I found my niche. I was around people that had the same problems. We were mad at the world. We were sad. All we cared about was drinking. We could all relate to each other. We all would talk about, yeah, I used to do this. I used to be this way, or yeah, this person wronged me, or yeah, this, like, it got comfortable. And plus, like, once I got over that initial, like, oh my God, I'm sleeping in a park.
Yeah.
And I found out that I was a good person. I was a good homeless person, because I didn't lose myself 100% into like, okay, I'm just going to sit here and drink. The way my mind works, I've seen it as a challenge.
Yeah. And
I was like, okay, like I'm homeless, but I'm having fun doing it though. I was like, I can drink myself to death doing this. So I became a really good panhandler. I was the life of the party again, but in a different sense of like, I was able to go out and get alcohol at like any given time, because I would use my charm. I would use the people I was homeless with. my go-to was I had a friend who was homeless. He was missing his leg and in a wheelchair, and we also had another one who he lost his fingers. So I would stand on the corner with them and go up to people and tell them that, hey, these guys are Vietnam vets. I was like, they have really bad PTSD. I was like, that one's my uncle. I was like, I'm out of work right now. I was like, but can you spare a couple of dollars to get them something to drink because like their minds are messing with them right now.
Yeah.
And they're really sick, and their VA checks don't get in until next month. And that's how I would panhandle. And granted, like, I respect veterans, and like, I really feel like bad for using that angle.
Yeah.
But I was in addiction, and that's how my mind operated. Like, I was really manipulative, and that's what I used.
Let's go over that again, because it's so important what you said. My mind was an addiction. It operated that way. It operated only one way: how to get it, how to get what I need. Correct? How to get money to buy what I need. How to get what I want, even though I know what I'm doing is, I'm not nothing against veterans or anything like that. I respect veterans, but I was in addiction. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I can relate. I can relate to what you just said, buddy.
Yeah, you like nail on the head right there. You summed that up very good, man.
But it's so true, right? You need it. You're in addiction, or you're now alcoholic. You know how to get it. You know what to do. It's what we do best. But you got to have it. But so continue, pal. It's really very fascinating. Go ahead.
So yeah, that continued for a month and a half, just living on the streets until, again, my past came back to haunt me. I had stolen another vehicle on top of the vehicle that I was already in trouble for, because my behavior repeats itself.
Yeah.
And granted, I didn't know it at the time, but I got picked up by the police when I was on the corner trying to panhandle. They brought me to the PD, and they were questioning me about it, and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I plead the fifth.
Yeah.
And they let me go. So I was like, okay, cool. I was like, here we go, man. I was like, I'm drinking myself. I was like, ain't no way I'm going to prison for whatever these, and like they confiscated my phone, and I had tons of stuff, incriminating things on my phone. So
yeah, right.
I could have been in jail for a number of things, and that was like my biggest fear. Because I'm like I don't know what I don't know what like they're investigating me on.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what? I already made it this far. I've been drinking for 2 months straight. I'm throwing up blood every morning. I'm yellow. I was like, I got the shakes. I was like, if I can keep this going for another month or so, I was like, I could drink myself to death. I was like, I won't have to face the consequence. I won't have to like face anything. I was like, if I can keep this going and figure out like a different way to hide from the cops for about another solid month,
I
was like, I'll pretty much be done for. And that was my plan.
Were you really anticipating leaving this earth, dying from your disease? Were you really saying, hey,
I was
really.
Yeah, it was either that or prison. I'm like, they're either going to catch me, I'm going to go to prison, I was like, so I made peace with those two options.
Okay. How?
But in the
how did you do?
Because I was like,
I'm done. I mean,
because I was like, look where I'm at.
Yeah.
I was like, and when I would get to that point of like that total where it was just me and my alcohol and nothing else mattered, when I would get to that state of euphoria where I was like, this isn't a bad way to go out. I was like, I wouldn't mind it. I was like, I could get drunk enough and step off this bridge, or I can get drunk enough and someone could hit me with the car, or I can get drunk enough and one of these people could stab me.
On your own power, not in jail, not in prison.
Yeah, not in jail, not in prison.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, but when I would be like kind of like buzzed up, I'm like, okay, like I'm gonna go back to prison, or I'm gonna die drinking.
Yeah,
and that's what I would tell everyone, because I'm like, this isn't fun for me anymore. I was like, this is me trying to take myself out at this point.
Did anybody watch you go through this?
Some of my friends and stuff, they've seen me like out there.
Yeah.
Like, I guess, like in passing. Some of them would come up, like when I would be sitting in the park, they would come up and be like, hey, Darris, isn't you? My son's mom is the one that would see me the most often, and she told me one night when she did pick me up, and this is a good segue into the turning point, but she picked me up one night, and it was one of those things where God throws you a life preserver.
Yeah.
Because like I said, I was getting, when the alcohol would run out in the mornings, I would be very, very sick, and I was sick to the point where I couldn't stand it anymore. I took myself to the hospital twice, and I started having nightmares, stuff like that. Well, I remember praying and stuff, and I remember my son's mom showed up, and she kind of breathed a little bit of life back into me because I was able to see my son and everything.
In that night, yeah. What did she do, though? What did she say to you?
She said that this isn't you, Darris. She's like, this isn't the person who I know. She's like, you have a son. She's like, the person I know. She's like, you work. She's like, you have a good job. She's like, you're clean.
Yeah.
She's like, I've never seen you this bad before. But the cool thing, or I shouldn't say the cool thing, the thing that like kind of softened the whole thing, because like, was when she said, she's like, whatever you decide right now, she's like, I'll support it. She's like, but she's like, I'm not going to let you see your son. He doesn't need to see you like this.
Yeah.
She let me see him for a little bit, and then she's like, he doesn't need to see you like this. She's like, so you're drinking and being on the streets is what you're going to do. She's like, I'll see you and give you a couple bucks. She's like, but if you're the Darris that I know, she's like, you'll face your consequences. And I'm like, man. And then it was mainly for my kid at the time, because she's like, well, you have a son now. And it brought everything back to where I was like, I can't do this.
Let's go through the alternatives now. Either go back to prison, or you die in the streets drunk, or go on that first step of the road to recovery and see your son and be around someone you love that you made. Those are alternatives, right? That you faced. And you know.
Yeah, and the latter was pretty daunting. And granted, I attribute some of this to the fact that I did end up getting buzzed up.
Yeah.
But I remember telling her, I'm like, well, in order for me to do that, I was like, I have to turn myself into the police.
Isn't that something? So you did, huh?
I did. I walked into the Bismarck Police Department, and I remember praying, and they took me that night. And the craziest thing, though, and this, I always remember this, is that we pulled up to the jail, and they're like, we can't find you in our system, Darris. And I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, like you were just in here. They're like, we can't find you. And I'm like, and in my head, because like I started looking for like signs from God, because I'm like, okay, I was like, I need God to get me through this. Even when I was drunk, I was like, listen, God, you know what's really in my heart. And I remember sitting there seeing that, and I was like, okay, I was like, that's what gave me hope, because I'm like, what if this is God's way of telling me that, hey, like you don't belong here, like you don't belong in jail. And I was like, and I made the offhand remark. I'm like, well, maybe I'm not supposed to be here, but they took me anyways. But
they did, huh?
Yeah, they took me anyways. But the funny thing is, though, like another miracle, and I do say it's a miracle because Justin Schwartz knows me personally. He knows my record. He's been the prosecutor on a lot of my cases, and never once has he given me like a decent bond. Yeah. He's always been like no bond or like 5,000, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, this time I showed up in court, didn't say a word. I remember praying too, because I was sick. I'm like, God, if this is really what you want me to do, please get me out of this, because I can't do it. He gave me an unsecured bond of $1,000. So I was let out that day, and I'll always remember that was one of the few times I've gone to court, and I've never had to say. I didn't say a word. It was just Justin Schwartz was just like, Your Honor, it seems like this is a no contact issue. He's like, I don't see any reason why we should hold Mr. Grant anymore.
Did you ever get a chance to see him later when you were sober and tell him?
Oh yeah, I've seen him a few times, and like when I've gone to court, I always say, hey Justin. I've seen him when I go to the courthouse for like some of my clients, stuff like that. It's mainly my attorneys though that I had that are kind of the most proud of me.
Wow. Now,
because they've seen me at my worst.
So your sobriety date is 6/17/2022.
Yep.
You remember your first day of being sober?
Yeah, I do. I remember wanting to die or thinking I was dying.
Yeah. Do you remember?
I was actually.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, keep going.
Oh, I was in Good Road Recovery Center, and they took me in as an emergency detox. And I remember waking up that next morning, sweaty. It was my first time showering in like weeks.
Yeah.
So, and I remember they even said, they're like, we thought you were dead a few times, like, because you would just lay there like for the first 2 or 3 days.
A detox is deadly. So many people have died in detox. I had a counselor that was always afraid when I went into detox. A detox is a scary thing. But so this place was called what?
Good Road Recovery Center.
Okay. So you're in detox for how many days, you think?
I was in there I was on social detox. Then they evaluated me, took me off social detox, and I was on room and board until I got my court cases taken care of. And once I was off room and board, they started me on inpatient treatment.
That was inpatient, so you stayed there.
Yep.
How many days or weeks were you there?
46 days, so about 7 weeks.
Did you get to a point where you really wanted to drink again, or were you just done?
Again, I always attribute it to the fact that the things that I did ask, that I prayed for, happened, and I would just remember those because they did give me a chance to leave.
Yeah.
They're like, you can leave. They're like, well, hold your bed. They're like, you can go take care of your court fines and stuff. And they totally gave me a chance to go. Like, they're like, yeah, you can leave right now. And that offer looked tempting. I remember talking to a couple of the case managers up there, and the smartest decision I ever did, because it was hard at the time, because I'm like, I don't know anyone up here. I was like, I'm going to be sitting here not doing anything for the next 2 weeks. And that's what they said. They're like, we can't start you in services. We can't, you can't leave for meetings. Or you can't do anything. You're just going to be sitting here. And I chose to stay.
And good for you. You did the right thing. That's another God move.
Yep.
You remember when you took step one? Remember when you were introduced to steps? Do you remember how unbelievable that step one is to conquer? Because for me, I never wanted to believe, because I never thought I could go a day or two without drinking. And I was stubborn. But do you remember when you said to yourself, yeah, that's me. I am powerless.
Yeah, I remember that when I sat across from my sponsor, and he asked me that question. And I said, look where I'm at. I was like, I'm in my 6th treatment. I was like, I'm looking at time in prison. I was like, I ended up becoming homeless. And granted, I only attributed to the powerlessness towards my addiction.
Right.
Now my perceptive change on that, my powerlessness is also over, somewhat, I'm powerless over people, places, things, stuff like that. So a little maturity when it comes to powerlessness. But
it does. But you know what he could have said back to you? Yeah, look, I know that you think that you could go back to prison and stuff like that. But what I mean is to you, are you powerless? Are you 100% going to surrender over alcohol or drugs? Do you want to see what that journey is like? Because you can take the first step, which you had by the way, staying put and not going out on a little, you could have left that place. But something that you did was the first real thing you did that was right. Do you remember what it was like when you finally started to listen to people share? Because I'm telling you, Darris, I did not want to listen to people talk about AA or anything. I mean, I just wanted them, Do you remember what it was like with listening to people share? Was it pretty amazing for you, actually listening?
To be real, I was only focused on, my share, and, I was trying to figure out how to share the right way.
Right.
That was what I was too focused on. Yeah. The people I did listen to share, though, I didn't know what they were sharing about. Yeah. I thought that AA meetings were just to go there and complain.
Yeah.
So that's honestly what I thought, but it turns out it's different. And
you know, it used to scare me, and see if you can relate to this. I used to feel like when I would go up and share that I was being judged. I would say something wrong, and somebody would go, he's still drinking. He's faking it. He's not saying the right thing. I'll bet you he doesn't even know what step 4 is, and he says he's completed the steps. I always felt like someone was out there judging me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I felt that way, too, at the beginning. That's why, again, I'm smart, so I intellectualized the 12 steps. I kind of did myself a disservice there, because I intellectualized it, because I went straight to, I kind of skipped the complaining part. The complaining part where I would openly share about the stuff that my feelings towards things, or
right.
I denied myself the support of the group as a whole, is what I did.
Well,
so I came off as a know-it-all.
I actually think, from what I heard earlier, is you understand the steps, because didn't you make amends to Captain Jack's, to the window?
Yep.
Do you know how many people would just blow that off and go, well, yeah, I just, a lot of people won't approach that because it's uncomfortable. What you did was you manned up and you went up. How did you do it? You just went up there and said, hey, do you remember back on a Sunday when somebody...
No, I think I had to write a letter. That was part of my court order.
Okay,
yeah.
right. But you made amends.
Yeah.
And they accepted it, right?
Yep.
That's part of the deal.
Because I would go back. I would go back because that was my favorite one, and I would go back and I would talk to like the people and stuff like that. And times I would go in there drunk and be like, oh hey, guess what? I did this, and they're like, yeah. So like I wasn't like kicked out. Do
you remember? And this is my favorite question to ask anybody. Do you remember when you finally said to yourself and you felt that the obsession had been lifted on you? Do you remember you feeling that, hey, you know what? I don't feel like I'm not even thinking about it. I don't feel that urge. I'm not obsessed and thinking, man, I sure miss drinking. I mean, I feel clear, crystal clear. Remember that?
Yeah, so I attribute that fact to when it was probably when my sister passed away.
Oh,
I was about 4 months into my recovery when that happened, and I remember getting the call because I did get picked up on a warrant, so I was in jail, and I remember my mom telling me what happened. I remember it felt like a punch to my gut.
Yeah.
And I remember instead of thinking like my go-to was, oh, hey, I'm going to get drunk. Yeah. It was like, now what? Like, how am I going to do? What am I going to do to help? What am I going to do to help? And granted, I was young in recovery, and like what I thought I was supposed to be doing for help was to help the situation. Some of the stuff ended up backfiring on me because I was trying to push my recovery onto my mother and help her through what I thought was helping through her grieving process.
Yeah.
So I kind of ended up unintentionally causing harm there, but it was due to the fact that like I was trying to think of ways that I could help instead of going to, I'm going to get drunk. My little sister's gone. I'm going to go get drunk, or I'm going to sneak a shot here, or I'm going to, like, it wasn't that. It wasn't my normal way of thinking because all the other funerals up to that point, that was my thing. I would get drunk.
That's how you recovered, or that's how you dealt with it.
And that was it. That was I think that was that moment where it was like, it's gone now, because I didn't go to my go-to, especially in a situation such as that. It was mainly, how am I supposed to help here? What am I supposed to do to help? How am I? And like I said, I was young. I was very immature in recovery, and I kind of did unintentionally cause harm. So, but I will always remember that was my turning point. Where, and plus, I've made amends to my sister's kids, and a lot of their stuff was, Darris, just don't drink anymore.
Let me tell you why I envy you so much, and because this is our conversation we had earlier. Can I mention your life now?
Go ahead.
There's a place called Seeds of Eden. It's here in Bismarck. And you wear many hats there, don't you, Darris? You're a peer support. You took classes for that.
Yep.
This place also offers job coaching, addiction and homelessness with people, severe mental, physical disabilities, care coordination. What you do there, and do you realize how ironic it is if you look back on your life to where your life was at one point, that now you go in and you're a role model for those who are having trouble. How cool must that be? I mean, you know, I don't say cool like wearing sunglasses and putting your thumbs up like Fonzie. You probably never even heard of Fonzie, have you? I'm so damn.
No, I have.
What I mean by cool is what you do is what I wish I could do every single day. I try with my podcast, but I don't know if my part helps. But what you do is you're helping people. What kind of feeling is that for you, and how rewarding is that? Talk about this place, will you?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm the peer support specialist, and I do help a lot of people. And some days it's a thankless job, but that's perfectly fine with me because it really makes use of all the stuff that I've been through. It makes use of making sense of all that, and it also helps solidify me because I have to do this job. To truly do this job, it takes a lot of I have to be able to show like what love and tolerance looks like without, being overbearing or stuff like that. I have to be able to lead someone, but also not expect them to take what I'm leading. So it's becoming comfortable with knowing that, hey, like, people are going to do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
They're also human beings because I can relate to all their situations, but also being in that positive support. So it's a lot of growth on my part as well. And my directors have done a fantastic job of putting me in situations to grow who I am, because my growth that I make on myself will and trickle down to the people that I'm serving. So me becoming more disciplined, me learning how to be a little bit more professional, me taking these trainings, me getting put into positions or situations where I'm uncomfortable. Because now I used to dislike those situations. Now it's like, no, these are your growth moments because you've never done this before.
Yeah.
And my directors have done a really good job of pushing the growth factor, and I'm really grateful for that, because my clients teach me that, hey, some days it's not just a job. Like I might be their only support sometimes. And when you're dealing with people that are actively in there or broken or hurt, I in turn have to take care of myself, like whether that be spiritually, mentally, because I do walk into situations where someone could be using or someone could be suicidal. And part of my like intellectualizing and stuff, like I can't do that because I'm working with humans. And it does make me rely on my higher power a lot more, because to be perfectly honest, some days, because I'm human too, I end up getting irritated. I'm like, hey, like, this solution is right here. Why won't you take the solution?
Right. Well, that's normal. That's natural.
Yeah. But it teaches me that, hey, like, when dealing with people, when truly working with people, that I have to maintain my spiritual side, because that's the only way this is going to work, because I can get burnt out from it some days.
Yeah.
So it pushes me closer to my higher power, while also making use of my intellect, my stuff that I've gone through, and it just helps me become a better person.
How long have you been doing this?
Since September.
Now let's give big-time props to your directors. Is that what you call them, directors?
Yeah, my directors.
Let's give them props for your directors for being smart enough, keen enough, wise enough to recognize someone like you with an enormous amount of talent and a heart. Did you ever think about that? I know you have. I have.
I've actually let them know that at one of our benefit things that we had a fundraiser like back in November, and I let them know.
What a compliment that is to you, knowing and trusting the fact that you do offer life experience, you offer hope. Isn't that what we all try to do when we stay sober and walk that journey? We all try, no matter what we do. For those of you who don't say anything, and for those of you who are on my There Is a Way Out page who think, oh, I'm probably not much of a factor on here because I don't say anything. Yeah, you do. You're a big-time factor. I've got this page, Darris. I hope you're on it. It's called There Is a Way Out. If you're not, we just became friends today. I'll send you an invite. It's a tremendous page. It's called There Is a Way Out. It's Facebook, and it's so many people on there that just have a heart like you do and want to see people grow and want to see recovery. And that's exactly what you're a role model for that. You know that?
Oh, yeah. In a sense, yes. I tend to not to shy away from that, but I do try to role model recovery, and it begins with taking care of myself.
And let's talk about that. Now we're going to transition into something that I find truly amazing. He started working out in prison. A buddy of his got him into something that I've never done in my lifetime. I tried when I was running long distances, but it doesn't work with a guy who weighs 122 pounds and can't keep a watch on his wrist, which was me. And by the way, chicks dig the guys that are emaciated and long distance runners like I was, hence I never had a date. But let's just move on.
That was me all in high school, so don't feel bad, man.
Now, this guy's 5'9". I got some pictures.
And a half. And a half.
Let me throw that in.
And a half. Make sure you get that half in there.
That is important. I just did an article today that's on our Walleye page and all of our other radio stations' pages about this guy. This guy, how much do you weigh now?
210, I think.
It's all 210 of muscle because Darris is trying out for Mr. Health and Fitness. This is a nationwide contest. It begins May 6th. Stop me if I'm wrong, but the voting begins May 6th. It goes to the 16th. You need to see the pictures of this guy, first of all. There's this one where he's picking up a house. Of your working out, do you work out every single day?
I try to, yes.
Good
when I'm able to.
He's worked on his diet. He says he eats broccoli now. He's worked on his
Tuscan
diet.
broccoli.
What's that kind? What kind?
Tuscan broccoli.
Sorry if I got the broccolis mixed up. Do you believe that maybe you're not addicted to working out, are you? Because I remember before here's the thing, real quick. I was a long distance runner. When I got hurt, my addictive nature kicked off, and I think that's when I started drinking because I needed an outlet for missing out on running. But do you find yourself addicted to working out?
To be entirely honest,
yeah,
I told the line with that.
Okay.
So there are days where that's all I look forward to. Some days,
yeah.
But I'm fully aware that hey, like that's kind of unhealthy as well.
Right.
As a recovering addict.
Right.
And I try to maintain my flexibility with it.
Yeah.
With so like my routine at the very beginning, which I kind of shied away from recently.
Right.
But my routine at the beginning was I would get up and I would go to the gym right away in the morning. That way, the rest of my day would be about everyone else.
Right.
Which is that was my discipline that I stuck to.
Yeah. Ironic nowadays, instead of the old days when he lifted a car, now he really does lift a car. Just trying to make a joke.
I see what you did there. I know. I see what you did there, man. I did.
You're very clever.
Yeah, we did that. Someone has to do the symbols in the background.
These big barbells of yours, by the way, are not plastic. They're real. Now, I put one of those shots in the story. It's what's the most that you've lifted? If I can say the right technology, what's the most you've lifted?
So I'll just use my deadlift because that's probably like my heaviest lift was 455.
Good Lord, 455. 455. Are you involved in competitions besides this one? Have you ever been in one before?
No, I haven't. This is a new thing for me. I just recreational gym goer.
Yeah. Well, I love what you said. I wish I had my phone open, but there was a question on there. What would you do with the $20,000 if you won? I believe that's the prize, correct?
Yep.
And once again, in a humble way, he said it perfectly. You want to tell everybody what you kind of said, if you can remember?
So the first thing is that I owe a lot of financial amends that I would like to get paid off. I'm currently paying them off in increments.
Right.
I would like to just get them all paid off and get those people their money that I owe them. That's rightfully theirs.
Right.
Also, I work in the nonprofit sector of Bismarck, and I work with a handful of nonprofits. And just to inspire some hope within them, I would divvy up the rest between the ones that are out here as well.
I knew you. I know you would. I know you would. And listen,
and it just and it's just to kind of cultivate that culture of like, hey, we're all on the same side here. We're all here to provide help, resources, and stuff like this, and to continue to cultivate that because like we have committees and stuff that I'm on where we all meet and everything else, and even the providers, we need to inspire hope within ourselves, and that's just all I want to do is inspire hope within the people that we work with because, like I said, sometimes we can get down. Sometimes when.
Of course. What is the website people can go to when they start voting?
So it would. I think that they have to. Well, there's a couple places in town that will be hanging up my flyer that I made where you scan the QR code.
Yeah.
But it's the MrHealthandFitness.com, and I think that they can enter in my name.
Yeah, I know they can. I did that story today, but I wasn't sure. MrHealthandFitness.com, right?
Yeah.
I think if they go on there, they can follow other. The only thing that I found on there was how to enter. And good Lord, I'm not going to enter this contest. I'm pretty sure, though, there'll be a way once we get close to May 6th, there'll be a way to direct people to vote, right? For sure. Mr. Health and Fitness, you said .com?
Yeah.
And this is people all around the country that can vote for you, right? Even my friends in San Diego?
This is a nationwide thing.
Now, if you get into the top 20, then you progress, and hopefully you get in the top 10. And who knows, you could be. There's a picture I took, which I love. I put on the cover. Do you like that picture?
I love it, actually.
You look like Clark Kent. You're too young to even know who that is, but Clark Kent, Superman.
Superman, dude. I know Superman.
So not only are you a giant in recovery, and not only do you walk and deal with people, like you said, where you can go in on a day and have a tough day and have some people, you said it's a thankless job sometimes, right? When you feel that maybe you're not being utilized or you're not doing anybody any good. You feel that way sometimes?
Yeah, I would be lying to say that I didn't.
Well, you're not. I mean, I say you're wrong, but that's okay. Because every time you show up in your armor, so to speak, and you're representing sobriety and you're representing a new way of life, you're definitely making a difference. But I don't know your environment. I'd like to come check this place out if I ever could.
Oh, no, I would actually, I would have to speak with my directors on that.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
But I would like to show it. And I honestly shouldn't say that it's a thankless job now that I think about it.
No, I didn't mean that. You know what I mean? I mean that you, you feel.
Some days I have we have bad days. Some days I have bad days. And it's just one of those things to where I'm like, but I did redo the training recently, and it brought it all back around full circle, which I really desperately needed.
Yeah.
Because some days I do feel like I'm like, well, what am I doing? Because we have certain rules and ethics we have to follow.
Of course.
And the state monitors that, so I'm working within a certain parameters and stuff. And
of course.
But with the training, though, they help solidify the fact that, hey, like, I'm here as basically a guide. Yeah. I'm not here to solve, because I'm a solver. That's the only reason why, like, some days I feel like I'm not doing nothing, is that if I can't solve a problem for you, that's where I find my value at. Is if I can solve a problem for you, then I find my value.
And that's what I meant. That's what I meant when I said that. And that's what I know you meant minutes ago when you said that as well. It's a job where you go in sometimes and you might not feel that you've done anything for anybody. And what I want to make sure that you know this, I'm sure your directors tell this, just by you being there, you're doing a lot. Make sense?
Yep, that makes like perfect sense. And that's what was reiterated to me as well, because I do voice this during my leadership coaching with the struggles that I have. Yeah. And again, these are all within me that are internal. Yeah. And sometimes being in this, especially in the training, a lot of the things where we're like, hey, like, we're not here to solve the problem. We're here to provide support. We're here to provide a shoulder. We're here to provide like a positive influence. And having that reiterated back to me was so beneficial, because I'm like, I'm drifting into this little category, because they have a term for this. Yeah. Actually, it's called peer drift, where I'm the peer. I can drift into different categories. Like, I can drift into a clinical category. I can drift into over-professionalism. I can drift too far into the friend category. And I noticed that, and I told them, I was like, I feel I'm drifting into that friend category sometimes. And then I was able to get back on track with them, because I'm like, one of my things that I learned with growth was admitting where you're wrong, admitting the areas that you need to focus on. And once I was able to admit that to them, that, hey, I feel like I'm drifting to this, they were able to guide me back to what I'm supposed to be doing as a peer support.
That makes perfect sense to me. And listen, Darris, just to wrap this up, if there's anything you want to tell anybody from your experience and your sober living, if there's anything you want to say to anybody listening right now that may be on the fence or may have a family member that they think is teetering over the edge, do you have anything you want to say to them?
That is fun. That's an adventure. That even the tough times, when you hand it over to your higher power, clever that may be,
yeah,
that the life really does become an adventure. The stuff that, if you had asked me a year ago, would I be doing this stuff now?
yeah.
I wouldn't have believed you. But I get to show up in many different capacities, and it's just because I put my faith in my higher power. I continue every day to be a better version of myself. I continue to focus on the things that are important. I continue to get up and face my challenges, even the times when I fall flat on my face.
Right.
And I continue to work within this organization that has really helped change my perspective on what it means to be a person in recovery.
Well, you're an awesome guy. I appreciate your time with me. Hang on real quick. This is Darris Grant. Again, you can check him out on MrHealthAndFitness.com. Get ready to vote for this guy because May 6th through the 16th, he could be Mr. Health and Fitness. This is nationwide, and you can vote on him anytime you want. He's also a tremendous guy. You can check out the article I wrote about him on 96.5, The Walleye. Darris, hang on real quick. Thank you, okay?
Yeah.
Hang tight real quick. This is why I love this podcast so much. I really do, because every guest has a story. Every guest has a point. Every guest can give you inspiration that you need. Because it's not easy. I know that. And for all who have failed in the past, you know that there's a new way of life. And for all who are thinking that maybe I do have a problem, a friend of mine has a problem, or a neighbor has a problem, have them listen to some of these podcasts. I promise you, there is a way out.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.